Hey everybody, it's Cactus in Color, and I'd like you to do me one huge favor before we start the video. I have a friend over on the account Am Not a Real Artist, and she decided to join with me to do YouTube so that I wouldn't be so scared and nervous and anxious. So please do me a huge favor and go check out her awkward energy videos and be really nice. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. Hi everybody, this video contains spoilers for both Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, so if you don't want to hear any of those, you might want to skip this video. Okay, so a long time ago, back when I was just a wee little baby, I started making fanfiction. Before I knew what fanfiction was, and I started to create characters and OCs. I started writing little stories and fictions and what if my character met that character, and by the time I was in middle school, I learned that there is a whole platform for it. Several even. So when I discovered it, I was absolutely blown away and I read non-stop. I used to just find little bits and pieces of stories, and then I realized it was connected to a whole website. And yeah, I'm talking about fanfiction.net. So when I discovered that website when I was in middle school, I went absolutely crazy with power. I had a whole library of stories and I couldn't be stopped. I think around the first week that I found fanfiction, I read so many stories and for so long that I actually stayed up almost 48 hours doing nothing but reading. That until I looked at the page and I was so sleep deprived and my eyes were so tired and strained that it looked like all of the J's and I's were dancing on the page, and I knew that something was wrong and something had to give. I still to this day don't remember exactly how I fell asleep. It just, next thing I knew, it was morning. So I tried my hand at writing fanfiction. I had a huge flop for being an original, and it was bad, but that's a story for another video, another day. So after that whole first fanfiction flub, I absolutely vowed that I was going to be completely original from that point on. And then, for some reason, I decided not to do that. So, this character that I'm working on here is Miyuki. Miyuki Yamanaka. Yeah, so much for originality. No, I know that there's a lot about characters being related to canons in some way, or canon characters already existing in the story or medium. I personally don't have a problem with it. I think some of them can be really compelling and really well written. Mine probably wasn't that. It was fun. It was definitely fun. So, this girl here, Miyuki, is Yamanaka's twin, Ino's twin. And I don't know why. I don't know why I went with that. I mean, in the story itself, Ino and her family served little to no purpose with her character, and so there wasn't really much of a solid reason I decided to do this. But I mean, it didn't really even factor into her abilities either, because I don't think I went the route of really, like, nailing her moveset after mind transfer. So I don't know why I did this, but my theory is that I saw the picture of Ino's mom from one of the fillers, and I was just shell-shocked, and I was like, wait, she doesn't look like Ino that much. Ino looks like her dad, so if Ino looks like her dad, then who looks like her mom? And my little brain couldn't comprehend them not having a sibling that looked like their mom. So I decided to go with a girl that had the blue eyes, not exactly in the same style, but the brown hair. And little Miyuki was born. And I can't really reason what other purpose that they had for being related. But More about her and her story. She was the character of the first OC story that I posted on fanfiction, aside from my first failure that we will not mention today. And her story was interesting. First of all, she was a really shy girl. She was in the same year as the other rookies in the academy, and she didn't really have too much in the way of friends. There was nothing wrong with her or anything, it's just that she was really quiet and shy, and she kind of lived in the shadow of her more confident sister. Though I didn't really specify that in the story, I'm just kind of trying to make their relationship sound more necessary. So she wasn't as outgoing as Ino was, and it kind of made her more timid and to herself, and she didn't really have anyone that she chose to hang out with so much. She didn't have a whole lot of friends, and I feel like I went the route of making her befriend Naruto, because two quiet people that, well, quote-unquote quiet people that don't have a lot of friends, it's bound to work, of course it is. So, I know that they were really close, and I ended up taking the route of trying to make her an original team. At the time, I didn't make a lot of male OCs and characters, and so it was a little bit of a struggle. But out of it came Satoshi and Hitao. Now, Satoshi was really brash and really loud and outspoken and hot-headed, not to mention reckless. So, even though he kind of gave Miyuki a hard time for being so quiet and used to kind of pluck with her for not being like as outspoken and really like soft and quiet, they ended up getting along eventually. On the other side, Hitao was kind of like the balance in between. He kind of acted like a more mature figure to kind of balance their very opposite personalities, and he kind of ended up becoming the foil that kept them together. So those two characters ended up becoming her team along with her teacher, which was a little bit of a maniac. She threw them headfirst into survival training as soon as they came for their Genin exam to her, and she came at them with everything she had as a Jonin. Quote, everything she had, cough cough. And basically tricked them into thinking that they were fighting against her for their lives. And somehow, Miyuki managed to impress her. I don't know how. I'm pretty sure the only thing that she really did on that mission, aside from inciting their teamwork, which was like a good move on her part, was she was extremely self-sacrificial, and she did the opposite of playing to her strengths. Miyuki was very speed-focused and agility-based, and she wasn't really one that was built for hand-to-hand, but for some reason she kept rushing in, hand-to-hand, and trying to take hits for her teammates, which in the long run, especially when you have someone like Satoshi that was built a lot more for taking hits and dishing out and taijutsu, it wasn't smart at all, and in the process it kind of did the opposite of teamwork, because it made her very it kind of made her take over in a sense and ignore their strengths. But we're gonna forget that. For whatever reason, she passed. She was allowed to pass, and their teacher, who was kind of like a copy of Kakashi in the sense that she did not want to have any of the students pass her exam and go on to become ninja, somehow let them go on and become ninja. So I'm not gonna go into the plot holes of middle school me's mind, but I also kinda am. I don't know why that happened. I don't know, but the team ended up eventually starting to get along with each other really well. They did a lot of missions. They cat sit for an old lady that had like 16,000 cats. They did the usual cleaning up rivers and picking herbs and gardening. And then they had a mission that was essentially like a ripoff of the Land of Waves arc, where they had it's a C rank mission, but it's actually an A rank mission thing because I wanted drama and I didn't know how else to generate it aside from copying it at the time. So they had their whole Land of Waves version of themselves, and the villain was a former student of their teacher, which gave way to the whole mystery of why their teacher didn't want to teach anyone in the first place. The girl had ended up running off with a guy and going rogue when she found out that she couldn't perform any jutsu and her sensei didn't have anything to help her. So that happened. Miyuki almost died, but then again, she almost always almost died. I don't know what it was with me constantly beating her up, but I feel bad for her, man. Feels bad. But after that, they continued moving on. They went through the Chunin exams, which I believe she couldn't participate in because she was still injured. So they ended up sitting it out that year. All of the events of the Chunin exam had absolutely nothing to do with her story. So she wasn't involved with that whatsoever. And for some reason, I think she had an interaction with Gaara. Like, I don't know why. It was in a flower field. I don't know why. I know she was given a book. Her teacher was like, hey, dude, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I have this book of herbs that I conveniently left here on your dresser, so if you want to get better faster, cough, cough, go find them. But she went into a flower field to find them instead of, you know, going into town and, you know, checking to see if they had any, and for some reason her teacher didn't just bring her the herbs, but sent her on a quest while she was still horribly injured. But Miyuki was aimed to be shipped with Sasuke. They had like 4 interactions overall, one of which included them accidentally being tied together and then trying to have to fight their way up the stairs in order to get to his kunai so that he could cut it. And that was just a nightmare all in itself, but it was very fun to write. They didn't really have too many other interactions, and they weren't on a team together, so there wasn't really much else that they did aside from that. I feel like they might have talked again once or twice, but they didn't really have anything else. I know that come Shippuden, for some reason at the end of Naruto, Miyuki went into some sort of coma for 2-3 years. I don't know why. Maybe it was loneliness induced, because there was absolutely nothing wrong with her. I never explained. I was just like, yep, she was in a coma, and you can't tell me why, and I can't tell you why. It just is. So apparently I just wanted to have her jump right into Shippuden and not have any kind of reason for anything that she was doing in the absence of the time skip. So I just didn't do it like a normal person and jump into Shippuden. I had to go coma. Had to. It was necessary. So as of Shippuden, the only real thing that I got into was sending her on a wild goose chase to go catch her teammate Satoshi that went rogue. And that was about it. That was pretty much the end of her story because I never finished it. But years later, I ended up essentially creating a revival character after almost forgetting but also not forgetting Miyuki existed, because how could I forget her? She was a queen. So I ended up creating Kiowa. That's the girl that I'm working on right now. And even though they don't really have any kind of relation to each other at all, they have a lot of situations and characteristics that make them very similar characters. So I accidentally rebirthed Miyuki into like whatever age I was when I started writing this, which I actually think I was either still in middle school or a freshman in high school. Probably a freshman in high school. But I started writing this story, and I wanted to play with cliches because I was going through a phase. And the cliches of fan fictions, like this character has a super tragic backstory, this character is Orochimaru's experiment, Orochimaru's daughter, and this character is related to this canon character, and this character is like the Ten Tails because we don't know what the Ten Tails is yet, so we're speculating and we're making our character have it and writing some crazy original story about it. I really liked those cliches. Like, it was like my guilty pleasure. So I decided that I wanted to do a play on that, and there was one very specific cliche where people would write about a character, typically a girl, that would be the 4th member of Team 7. There was no reason why they were added, or some stories would make up reasons as to why, but they were usually really like angry or really socially outcast in their own way, really like angsty in some way, and usually had some sort of reason that they had a grudge against Sasuke. And because, unlike the others, they didn't fangirl over him, it ended up going from a hate relationship to a love relationship. And it was nice. I liked reading them. I liked them a lot, actually. But instead of doing that, I wanted to see what would happen if I took that concept and I tweaked some things. So I ended up making a character that, rather than hating Sasuke, she had a massive crush on the guy. I actually wanted to make her a fangirl because I feel like the fangirls were always kind of like demonized in these cliche fanfictions. So I wanted to make her specifically that. I wanted to make her a fangirl. I wanted to make her like borderline obsessed with the guy. But because she's so shy and everything was so internalized and she was such a soft-spoken and quiet character, I ended up instead accidentally just making her into a girl with a crush. So at least that's what all the comments said when I wrote this story. They were like, she's not a fangirl, she's just a shy girl with a crush. So that was my bad. I guess I messed that one up. But you know, she was a bit more motivated than Miyuki. She had reasons for the things that she wanted to do. And even though she was also focused more on agility and she avoided hand-to-hand, it was more so because she just wasn't really confidently built for taijutsu. She was kind of afraid to do these kind of things, and she was very frail and easily hurt, so she had a really low defense stat. So going hand to hand usually wasn't the best idea for her. So I ended up making her a sensory ninja, and her sensory ability was that she was able to pick up chakra signatures and feel out chakras by the sensation and sense of feeling. So it was usually manifested in the form of having a really strong intuition or being able to have some sort of locational foresight. And it's really similar to Karin, but I didn't know Karin existed. Well, I mean, I did, but I didn't exactly know what she did at the time. So I thought I was making this completely original. But as the fourth member of Team 7, she was kind of like the one that you forgot existed, and she didn't really say anything and kept to herself a lot and was afraid to interact, especially with Sasuke, especially because Sakura was there. She didn't have anything against Sakura or Ino, which was another thing that was really common in cliché fanfics. So instead, I kind of had it to where she respected them. Like, she respected them, and she was also kind of terrified of them because they were so pretty and so outspoken, and to her, they were kind of the things that she was terrified that they embodied way more than she could. Kind of like what she wanted to be. And so she didn't really speak to them much, and she kind of was afraid to talk to Sakura a little bit, but as the team began to grow together and she came out of her shell slowly, that started to change. I believe she really started to find her footing when it came to her sensory ability in the Land of Waves, which started a little bit of jealousy because Sasuke was used to being the prodigy. So while she was getting a lot of extra attention from Kakashi because the way that her sensory ability worked, it allowed her to copy, basically, by copying the amount of chakra someone uses, by feeling how they push and transfer the chakra through their body, and it made her somewhat adept at nature transformations and things like that. So, due to the nature of their copying being similar, Kakashi took it upon himself to try to assist her and make her better as a ninja, and Sasuke got all huffy about that because he's the one that's the center of attention and no one else is allowed to be. But, you know, with the run-ins with the Zabuza and everything like that, she ended up in really tough shape because, like Miyuki, she was constantly getting beat up for some reason. But I think she got beat up a little less than Miyuki did. But I never really allowed Kyoa to win. Like, almost every situation she was in, she kind of came out a little messed up than she was before, and usually really beat up and just slight marginal emotional and physical growth. after coming back and going through the tuning exams, she actually wasn't allowed to participate with them in the actual tuning exams because, of course, that would be considered like an unfair advantage in some ways. So she was actually pulled out with a lot of other teams that had solo members like her, like an extra fourth member, and they went through a run of the tuning exams that was basically for those extra members, and they had to participate solo. In the process, she ended up meeting a few people, 3 of them actually. 2 of them, I'm not really sure of their names, so I'm going to avoid, but she ended up meeting this girl, this spunky, outspoken, like, foul-mouthed girl named Motsuki that I think I ended up making her Asuma's, like, niece, and oh my gosh, I loved her so much. But the 2 of them, like, they kind of meshed together in a weird way because Kyo was terrified of her at first because she was so outspoken. But she ended up being really cool, and she was like, you know what, you're kind of quiet, but we can make that work. We're gonna get along great. So they kind of built off of each other's personalities, and she really helped Kyo to get out of her shell and start pushing herself further and being better. So, she was still allowed to participate in the finals. She didn't win. She went up against one of the people that was also on the solo exams, and he had a very difficult background, very strict parents and stuff. So he was kind of expected to win, but he was expected to win in a landslide. So even though he won, like, he wasn't given the recognition. He was actually scolded for, like, making his family look bad, essentially. Well, Kyoa, even though she lost, like, her teammates and her friends were like, yo, you did so good! Like, I'm so proud of you! You're really improving! So the dissonance kind of made them to eventually become friends, too. Kyo and Sasuke had a few interactions. They were both being trained by Kakashi during the pre-final exam situations with the tuning exams, and they actually interacted more than Miyuki and Sasuke did, to be honest. They had like a pretty chill like friendship, and it kind of developed into being like somewhat casual. She was able to speak more than like 2 words to him, and she was really proud of herself for it. But since then, and since Shippuden happened, considering she always lived alone, she didn't really have like parents, and she had a brother, but he had passed. Come Shippuden, she was beginning to struggle with the fact that Naruto was now off training, Sakura was doing training with Tsunade, Sasuke had gone rogue, and she felt really alone, especially consider after the invasion, Motsuki had essentially lost, like, the 3rd Hokage, who she was related to. So everyone was kind of isolating themselves, sorry, and Kyo didn't know how to cope. So in the process, she was reached out to by a cool Anbu dude, and he initially invited her to join this root cell thing, which was kind of odd because it was supposed to be a secret. But I didn't know the root cell, the actual canon root cell, was run by Danzo, so this story could have gotten a lot darker. But she ended up joining, and lo and behold, it's her brother, because to join the root cell, you have to fake your death, and you have to become a ghost in the night, and your identity has to be white, so that you can't be traced back while you're doing secret work. So she became that, and I think my aim for her was for her to kind of find her own motivation and get into some trouble trying to save Sasuke instead of like helping to eliminate him. So yeah, I didn't finish the story, but it makes me feel kind of bad because apparently people really liked it. But that's the end of the video. Here are my 2 girls. If you liked this, you know, you can feel free to subscribe. I don't want to pressure you. You can kind of do it if you want to. You know, subscribe, like, and comment, and all that good stuff. But thank you for watching. Bye!